And joining me now is Republican Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota. He's also a member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. Congressman Johnson, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Interesting times.
I know, and you had a spirited reaction to all of our great reporting that you just heard. Let me just ask you, though, off the bat. I mean, Julie obviously said you have been defending this deal. So just to put a fine point on it, are you a yes on voting on this deal?
I am a yes on this deal. I think it's a no-brainer. And when I'm talking to other members, Kristen, who are still working through the bill, I tell them four things. This is an historic agreement in four ways. Number one, this is the biggest spending reduction in the history of our country. Number two, it's the largest clawback or rescission of funds in the history of our country. In fact, it's bigger than all of the other rescissions combined.
You're talking about the COVID funds.
I'm talking about $29 billion in COVID funds. Number three, it is the single largest change to environmental permitting, siting of energy projects since the passage of NEPA in 1970. And number four, it's the biggest change to welfare reform in our country since 1996. This is historic.
Well, as you know, some members of your party are not sold, and let me read you what some of them have said. Julie alluded to some of this. Ken Buck tweeted, Kevin McCarthy has endorsed a debt ceiling deal that will ensure our country hits $35 trillion in debt in less than 2 years. Joe Biden and Democrats would now get a free pass on defending their reckless spending before the next election. This deal must be rejected. Ralph Northam tweeted, Norman, I should say, tweeted, this deal is insanity. A $4 trillion debt ceiling increase with virtually no cuts is not what we agreed to. Not going to vote to bankrupt our country. The American people deserve better. What is your message to those members of your own party who say the cuts do not go far enough?
And to provide some context first, yeah, there are 4 or 5 outspoken members that are putting out these tweets every day. There are 10 or 20 times more members who are talking about the historic wins in this bill. Now, I know we always give the loudest microphone to those with the most strident message. But the reality is this, our government is spending too much money. We need to turn this ship of state around, but it's an aircraft carrier. Yeah. And you do not turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. And so what I say to my friends on the far right, the Democrats have grown government over the last 60 years because they understand the power of incrementalism. I think part of the problem with Republicans is that we are so often focused on hitting the Hail Mary pass that we forget about the power of incrementalism. This is going to spend less money next year. That is not sufficient. That does not solve all the problems of this country, but it's a big win. Let's put it in our pocket and get another win tomorrow.
I want to ask you about some of what we just heard, which is obviously there are 3 Republicans on the Rules Committee that have been sharply critical of this deal. How concerned are you that this gets held up and gummed up in the works, if not tomorrow, along the way to a vote on Wednesday?
Ralph and Chip have been sharply critical. I would tell you, Thomas Massey's been far more reasoned. Thomas is a guy who believes in the math. He understands the numbers. He's going to want to read this bill. I don't know how Thomas is going to come down.
Does it get through the Rules Committee, though? How confident are you?
It will get through the Rules Committee. It's going to get through the Rules Committee. It's going to get through the House. It's going to get through the Senate. It's going to be signed into law by the president. This is going to happen. Now, it's going to be...
By June 5th? By the June 5th deadline?
Well, the Senate is pretty hard to bank on. I'm not an expert on the Senate. I don't know how those guys do business. It seems like they're always confused about what's going on over there. Very arcane parliamentary procedure. But I'll tell you, I am confident this is going to get done. There are too many big wins for America for it not to.
Well, I guess that's the big question, given the pressure, given the enormity of the economic projected calamity. You feel confident today that this will get to President Biden's desk?
I am absolutely confident. I've talked to dozens of members. The strongest argument against this thing is that it isn't perfect. I don't know, gang, welcome to humanity, right? In any negotiation, nobody gets everything they want. We cannot let perfect be the enemy of the good, and I guarantee you the majority of the House is going to agree.
Let me ask you about some of the criticism that you are getting from the other side of the aisle. It's about these new work requirements. As you know, Democrats really forcefully push back against them. Progressives, a number of them are saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't know if we're going to support this because of the new work requirements. And if you look at the actual research, it shows, this is from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, work requirements don't actually move people off of public assistance. And according to that same research, after Arkansas implemented work requirements in its Medicaid program, 50% of recipients had serious problems paying medical debt, 56% had delayed medical care, and 64% delayed medication due to cost. What do you say to critics of work requirements who say they are just cruel to people who rely on government assistance.
That is utter and total balderdash. So you look at that Robert Wood Johnson study. It dealt with one state on Medicaid work requirements that this bill doesn't even address. The bulk of the literature that we have on SNAP work requirements and TANF work requirements that this bill does address is that they are home run hits in moving people out of poverty.
Congresswoman Jayapal said it sends a message to poorer communities that the government doesn't trust them. How do you respond to that?
I get it. Congresswoman Jayapal thinks that work is punishment. I believe that work is opportunity.
She's making a different argument, though. She's making an argument that it is sending a message that the government doesn't trust poor communities, that in some way it is effectively punishing people.
Okay, so let's talk about a message. If we want a country that takes care of our most needy citizens, and that's the kind of country we need to have, a big part of that is making sure that we focus those scarce resources onto needy families. So we want to talk about a message. What kind of a message does it send to allow a 27-year-old man in downtown Minneapolis with no kids, no disabilities, with a help wanted sign around every corner, that it's okay for him to not work? We'll take care of his food, we'll take care of his heating and cooling, we'll take care of his cash needs, we will take care of his housing needs. He doesn't want to work, but we'll still provide him that. That sends the wrong message.
You have expressed confidence that this is going to get done, that this is going to get to President Biden's desk. We saw in 2011 the nation's credit rating was downgraded because, according to S&P at the time, the political process was so broken at the time. Now you have this warning from Fitch, another credit rating agency, warning that it may downgrade the nation's credit rating if this is not done and if the politics aren't put aside. What do you make of that warning, and how concerned are you that there could be economic repercussions even if this bill is signed into law?
That's why we've got to get this bill done. It's time for the big boys and the big girls to step up and realize that we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and that we've got to get this done. Now, I would mention with the S&P downgrade back in 2011, that wasn't because it took us a while to get a deal. It was because the contours of the deal were so modest. They felt like that it did not do enough to stave off American insolvency. That's what I love about this deal. Saving $2.1 trillion in the 10-year window is a big win.
Very quickly, do you believe that Speaker McCarthy's job is on the line over the next 7 days to get this over the finish line?
Speaker McCarthy's stock is trading higher in the House than it has at any other point. He understands this conference. Of course, there are people who will complain, but he's not focused on his job. He's focused on saving the country and getting spending back under control, and he's going to succeed.
Congressman Johnson, thank you. Thank you for being here in person. We appreciate your perspective. Now you have a marathon week ahead.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.